People like you don't belong in this building." The words cracked across the lobby louder than the guard's boots on marble. He leaned close, breath hot, hand clutching the sleeve of her orange blazer as if force could rewrite fact. Spit sprayed with each syllable. The crowd froze. Phones lifted. Somewhere, a gasp cut the silence. But she didn't flinch. Her eyes, steady, dark, unyielding, met his fury with a calm that burned hotter than fire. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now back to her." She had walked through the revolving doors with nothing but a slim folder tucked under one arm, her stride unhurried, her posture measured. No bodyguards, no briefcase of steel, no gold watch ticking arrogance, just presence. But to the men behind the desk, that wasn't enough. They saw plainness, they saw color, and decided she was an intruder. "HR is downstairs," the receptionist added, voice pitched high enough to draw snickers from the corner. "You're in the wrong place." The insult wasn't whispered. It was designed to be heard, to brand her out loud. She stood still, silence wrapped around her like armor, and silence unsettled them. The guard's grip tightened, his veins rising as though restraint alone could erase her existence here. A young employee lingered near a column, phone half raised, hesitation all over his face. His whisper barely audible, "She doesn't look lost." His eyes darted between the woman's calm and the guard's rage, and for the first time he realized he was witnessing a fracture, not enforcement. The manager stormed forward, shoes echoing like a gavel on the marble floor. His jaw set, his voice carried. "Board members don't wait in lobbies. Whoever you are, you're holding up real business." He snatched the visitor pass from her lapel and slapped it against the desk so hard it bounced onto the floor. Gasps rolled across the room. Still, she said nothing. Not then. Her eyes tracked the flimsy plastic card on the ground, then rose slowly back to his face. That pause, that composure, it was heavier than any outburst. The crowd shifted uneasily, because they'd seen this story before, and they knew the quiet was never empty. The guard pulled her closer, face inches away, voice cracking into a shout meant to humiliate. "This isn't your space. You're wasting everyone's time." But the truth was written everywhere on the glow of recording phones, on the shame curling in the receptionist's forced smile, on the silence she held like a blade. And in that silence, the lobby transformed. The chandeliers didn't sparkle, the marble didn't shine. The air itself braced, waiting, because what stood here wasn't a woman begging for entry. It was power, anchored, patient, and moments away from reminding the room exactly who she was. She didn't answer the insult. She didn't have to. The lobby answered for her. A ripple moved through the room, voices sharp but hushed, the kind of whispers that spread faster than reason. "Did he just say that?" one woman muttered, phone raised higher. A man in a gray suit shook his head, whispering to his colleague, "If she were white, they'd already have opened the elevator." The receptionist smirked, emboldened by the guard's grip. She tapped the desk like it was a gavel. "Security's coming. You can't just walk in here and demand access. Not dressed like that." Her tone wasn't professionalism, it was performance, rehearsed disdain meant for an audience. The woman in the orange blazer remained still, her silence cutting deeper than any retort. She had faced this script before in banks, hotels, even on airplanes. The roles changed, but the words never did. Her breath was steady, each inhale measured like she was counting down. Then the manager emerged. Mid-40 seconds, sharp tie, false confidence. His shoes cracked against the marble like gunshots as he stepped between the guard and the crowd. "Board members don't wait," he announced, loud enough for every camera lens to capture. "This is wasted time. Move her out." His eyes swept over her without pausing, already convinced of a lie. He reached for the folder tucked beneath her arm. She didn't resist, didn't even glance at his hand. The folder slipped from his grip and landed with a dull slap against the desk. He didn't open it. He didn't need proof. His mind was already decided. "Another fraud," he muttered. Words meant to sting. Words meant to stick. Gasps again. Phones tilted higher. The young employee by the column swallowed hard. His whisper barely carried, "This is wrong." But his camera didn't lower. The guard pushed her shoulder lightly, testing her ground. "Do yourself a favor. Leave before this gets worse." His voice carried a crack of authority, but it rang hollow, an echo against marble that didn't belong to him. She stood anchored, not defiant, just immovable, and that was what unsettled them most. She wasn't pleading, she wasn't explaining, she was simply present, refusing to vanish. The receptionist crossed her arms. "You've got 5 seconds before you're escorted out." She smirked at the cameras now circling, as if she were starring in her own viral clip. But the woman's stillness shifted the air. Guests whispered louder. Someone near the back muttered, "Why are they treating her like this?" Another voice, "She hasn't even spoken." The manager picked up the discarded visitor pass from the floor, snapped it in two, and dropped the pieces into a wastebasket. "You're done here," he said flatly, dusting his hands like a judge closing a case. The silence that followed was heavier than his words. He had written his verdict, but the room wasn't buying it, and the woman in the orange blazer, silent, steady, unshaken, wasn't finished. She was just beginning. The broken pass lay at the bottom of the wastebasket like discarded evidence, its halves catching the fluorescent light as if mocking the word visitor. Around it, the lobby shifted. No longer idle chatter, no longer polite discomfort now, it was judgment, rising from every corner. A woman near the window whispered, "He really just snapped her pass in front of everyone." Another man, coffee cup in hand, muttered, "That's not policy. That's humiliation." The manager straightened his tie, mistaking silence for submission. "Escort her out," he said, gesturing sharply to the guard. The guard stepped forward, broad shoulders blocking the nearest camera's view. He gripped her arm again, firmer this time, as though force could rewrite the story already spreading across raised screens. But she didn't move. She didn't resist. Her arm remained where it was, anchored, her eyes locked forward as if she were measuring more than the moment, measuring the man himself, measuring the cost of his arrogance. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," the guard barked. The receptionist chimed in, voice sweetened with cruelty. "This is what happens when you pretend to be something you're not. You end up exposed." She folded her arms, watching, waiting for the cameras to capture a walk of shame that never came. Because the woman didn't budge. She remembered 20 years earlier, 23 years old, walking into a downtown bank in a thrift store blazer, deposit slip in hand. The teller froze her account, called it unusual activity. She had collateral, proof, everything in order. But the eyes across the desk told her she wasn't trustworthy. She hadn't flinched then either, and she wouldn't now. The lobby lights hummed. The guard's grip grew tighter. "We're done here." From the corner, the young employee finally spoke louder than a whisper. "She's not disrupting anything. You are." His voice cracked, but the words carried. Cameras swung toward him. The manager snapped, "Stay in your lane." But cracks were forming. Guests shifted uncomfortably. A man in a navy suit said, "Why are you treating her like a trespasser? She hasn't done a thing." His voice carried over the marble, over the hum, over the guard's command. The manager's smile thinned. "Sir, mind your business." Yet the crowd was already engaged. One phone streamed live, its red light blinking like an alarm. Another camera flashed silently, capturing the guard's hand clamped where it didn't belong. The woman finally turned her head, slowly, deliberately. Her gaze met the manager's. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Every second you continue," she said evenly, "is being recorded. Not by me, by them." Her chin tilted toward the circle of witnesses, the audience he had underestimated. The guard hesitated. The receptionist shifted uncomfortably. The manager forced a chuckle, hollow, strained. "You think a few phones will change anything?" But his words fell flat, swallowed by the charged air. Because everyone in the lobby knew the truth. He wasn't in control anymore. And the woman in the orange blazer, silent, composed, immovable, was about to prove it. The guard's hand lingered on her arm, but his grip had lost its certainty. It was no longer command. It was hesitation disguised as authority. The cameras caught it. The murmurs thickened. A woman near the reception desk whispered, "She hasn't even raised her voice." Another voice from the back replied, "That's why it's scarier. She knows something they don't." The manager, sensing the shift, leaned in with sharper words. "Let me be clear. You are not authorized to be here. Board meetings are for executives, not for imposters." He spat out the last word like it had weight, as if saying it enough times would make it real. Still, she didn't flinch. She simply inhaled, slow and steady, as if she were drawing oxygen from a deeper well than anyone in the room could reach. Her silence wasn't empty. It was loaded. The receptionist slammed her palm on the desk. "Security now! Remove her!" Her voice cracked, a little too loud, a little too desperate. Phones lifted higher. Guests stepped back, giving space not to the receptionist's command, but to the quiet force standing in orange. Then, at last, she moved. A single-motion hand to her blazer pocket, pulling out her phone with the calm precision of someone reaching for a pen. She lifted it to her ear. The lobby stilled, as if waiting for a verdict. "Activate internal protocol," she said softly. Her tone wasn't urgent. It was absolute. On the other end, a voice replied, firm and efficient, "Protocol engaged. Every word is logged. Every action time. Stamped. Live to corporate." The manager blinked. "What did you just say?" She lowered the phone, eyes fixed on him. "I said this moment will not vanish." The young employee by the column felt his chest tighten. He'd seen arrogance in this building before, but never resistance like this, quiet, steady, unshaken. He whispered again, louder this time. "She's not lying." The guard stepped back half a pace. He looked at the cameras, at the phone streaming, then at the woman he'd tried to shove out. Something in her stillness unsettled him more than any shouting match ever could. The manager sneered, but his voice had lost its rhythm. "So you called someone? What does that prove?" The woman tilted her head, gaze sharp enough to cut glass. "It proves I'm not the one who should be worried." The silence that followed wasn't passive. It was charged, like air before a storm. Every witness felt it. Every phone recorded it. And every second that passed pressed the weight heavier onto the men who had tried to erase her. For the first time since she walked through the door, the lobby no longer belonged to them. It belonged to her. And though she hadn't spoken her name, the truth was already unfolding in the room. She wasn't waiting for permission. She was waiting for justice. The air in the lobby shifted. What had started as a scuffle between a guard and a woman in an orange blazer was no longer private. It was a stage, and every phone raised became a spotlight. The hum of whispers built into something heavier, a chorus of disbelief. From the far corner, a woman in a denim jacket whispered into her phone, "They're really doing this," in front of everyone. Beside her, a college kid angled his camera higher, muttering, "This is going viral in minutes." The manager waved a dismissive hand. "You people need to step back. She's trespassing." His voice strained against the growing noise, but the crowd didn't move. If anything, they leaned in closer. The young employee, still clutching his phone by the column, swallowed hard. His voice cracked as he finally spoke loud enough for the room to hear. I saw her name this morning on the schedule. She's supposed to be here." Heads turned. The manager's eyes snapped toward him like daggers. "Excuse me?" "I checked the system," the young man stammered. His phone shook in his hand, but his voice steadied. "C. Carter, boardroom access, executive clearance." Gasps. The lobby hummed louder. The guard's grip loosened without meaning to. The receptionist's smirk faltered. The manager's laugh was forced, brittle. "He's mistaken. Fresh hire. Doesn't know protocol yet." But the witnesses weren't buying it. A man in a suit shook his head. "So the new kid noticed what you didn't?" The receptionist snapped. "Enough of this circus." She reached for the phone on the counter, punching keys with trembling fingers. "Calling security command. She's being removed." The woman in the orange blazer stood calm, silent. Her eyes swept across the crowd, then settled on the young employee. For the first time, her lips curved, not a smile, not quite, but a signal. Acknowledgement. His small act had cracked the veneer. "Don't listen to him," the manager barked. "He doesn't know what he's talking about." But the young employee lifted his chin. "I know what I saw." His words were steadier now, emboldened by the phones capturing every second. From the back, a guest spoke up. "She hasn't even raised her voice. Why are you treating her like a criminal?" Another chimed in. "Yeah, and why is the intern's story more believable than yours?" The manager's face flushed red, his authority fraying thread by thread. He slammed his hand against the counter. "This is my building, my rules." The woman finally spoke again, voice calm but cutting. "Your building?" She let the words hang just long enough for the crowd to wonder. The guard stepped back. The receptionist's hand hovered uncertainly above the phone. The manager froze, realizing the shift. Because now the room wasn't just watching, it was waiting. And for the first time, the weight of silence wasn't on her shoulders, it was on theirs. The lobby felt smaller now, though nothing had changed but perception. The marble still gleamed, the chandeliers still hung, yet the air pressed in like a closing fist. Every pair of eyes had shifted away from her, toward them, the manager, the receptionist, the guard. Their confidence was leaking into the floor with every passing second. He tried to patch the hole with noise. "Board access requires verification," the manager barked. "We don't just let anyone stroll in here flashing a fake name." His words bounced off the walls, brittle, too loud to be trusted. The receptionist piled on. "Exactly. People pull stunts like this all the time. High-level cards, fake bookings, made-up credentials. It's fraud, plain and simple." Her voice carried, but her eyes darted sideways at the glowing phones. The guard, who had been the loudest moments ago, said nothing. His hand still hovered near her arm, but he didn't dare touch her again. His silence spoke louder than his orders ever had. From the back of the room, a man in a navy suit raised his voice. "You've got half the lobby recording this. If she's a fraud, prove it. Pull up the system and show us." The manager stiffened. "I don't answer to random onlookers." Another guest cut in. "Then who do you answer to? Because right now it looks like her." The statement sparked a low rumble of agreement, a rolling murmur that spread through the crowd. The young employee by the column finally stepped forward, voice firmer now. "I saw her name. Executive clearance. You can check the logs yourself." The manager spun toward him, venom in his tone. "You're one mistake away from unemployment." But the intern didn't back down. "Then fire me. But the truth is still the truth." "Oh." Gasps rippled through the lobby again, not because of the threat, but because of the courage it took to say it out loud. Cameras tilted toward him now, capturing a crack in the wall of fear. The woman in the orange blazer hadn't moved, hadn't raised her voice. Her silence was a mirror, and in it the staff saw their own desperation reflected back. The receptionist's jaw tightened. "Security's on their way, she'll be gone in minutes." But the crowd wasn't convinced anymore. A woman with a stroller stepped forward. "Gone? She hasn't done anything. You're the ones making a scene." The manager's hands curled into fists, his voice ragged with strain. "This is my building, my rules, and if she doesn't leave..." She finally lifted her head, gaze cutting straight through him. "Careful." The single word hit harder than any shout. It was calm, clipped, final. The crowd hushed instantly. For the first time, the manager's certainty cracked. He looked at her, at the phones, at the staff shrinking behind the desk, and he realized the lobby wasn't listening to him anymore. They were waiting for her. The word hung in the air like a blade. "Careful." It silenced even the chandeliers. The crowd leaned in, phones hovering higher, waiting for the next strike. The manager's nostrils flared. His authority, once booming across the marble, now trembled under the weight of one calm warning. He tried to recover. "Escalate it," he barked at the receptionist. "Log her as a security threat, trespassing, fraud attempt." His words came too fast, stumbling over one another. The receptionist fumbled with her keyboard, tapping keys with shaky fingers. Her voice followed, shrill and cracking. "Unauthorized entry, possible identity scam." She trailed off, glancing at the woman in the orange blazer like she half believed the lie herself. The guard shifted awkwardly beside her. His hand no longer touched her. Instead, it hovered in the useless space between orders and action. The crowd noticed. "Why isn't he removing her?" someone muttered. "Because he knows," another replied. The woman stood perfectly still, her silence louder than all their noise. The young employee's voice cut through again, this time stronger. "You can log whatever you want. The truth's in the system. Her name is there." The manager snapped his head toward him, fury dripping. "One more word and you're gone." But the intern didn't shrink. His phone light gleamed against his face as he said, clear enough for every recording device to capture, "She's not the fraud. You are." The crowd erupted gasps, whispers, a ripple of disbelief turning into open resistance. "He's right," a man near the window called out. "She hasn't even touched anyone. You're the ones escalating." The manager slammed his hand against the counter so hard the echo rang like a gunshot. "Enough! Security is on their way!" "She's leaving in handcuffs if I have to drag her there myself." His chest heaved, his tie askew. He was unraveling in front of the very people he meant to control. The receptionist, seizing the opening, added venom of her own. "Yes, People like her think they can walk in here with fake names and fake power. We don't fall for tricks. That word, people like her, landed heavy. The crowd shifted, murmurs swelling into outrage. A woman with silver hair called out, "We all heard that. Don't pretend you didn't mean it." A young man lifted his phone higher. "You just said the quiet part out loud." The woman in orange finally raised her chin, her voice sharp and steady. "Every word you've spoken has been logged. Every insult, every threat, every attempt to erase me." She didn't raise her volume. She didn't need to. The silence that followed carried her words farther than any shout could. The guard lowered his eyes. The receptionist froze mid-keystroke. Even the manager's hand trembled on the counter, because deep down they knew the truth. The scene they tried to stage wasn't going their way. The narrative had flipped, and the woman they tried to erase was still standing, calm, immovable, ready for the moment they least expected when silence would turn to revelation. The manager's jaw clenched so tight a vein pulsed in his temple. He looked from the phones to the woman in orange, then back to the crowd that refused to disperse. His voice dropped lower, harsher. "You think recording this makes you powerful? You think silence makes you untouchable? I can end this right now." She didn't blink. She lifted her phone again, placed it gently against her ear, and spoke with a calm that carried more weight than his shouting ever could. "Begin escalation," she said. A voice on the other end, crisp and measured, answered instantly. "Phase 2 engaged. Audio logging expanded. Visual feed confirmed. Corporate notified." The lobby froze. The words weren't theatrical, they were procedural. Cold, factual, undeniable. The manager barked a nervous laugh. "Corporate, please. No one's watching you." But the receptionist's eyes widened. She had heard the voice too professional, official, undeniable. She whispered, Who is she talking to?" The guard took a step back, uncertainty pulling at his stance. He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding the cameras now squarely on his face. The young employee stepped forward, heart hammering but voice clear. "She's not bluffing. That's a live channel." He looked straight at the manager. "You know it, and you're afraid of it." The crowd hummed louder, murmurs turning into fragments of solidarity. "She has backup. They're exposed. This is bigger than just today." The woman in orange lowered her phone, her gaze steady. "You wanted to make this about rules," she said evenly. "So let's make it about rules. Yours, mine, and the ones you broke the second you touched me." Gasps cut through the air again. The guard dropped his arm completely, retreating 2 steps as if burned by her words. The manager leaned forward, desperate. Empty threats, nothing more. But his voice cracked on the last word. Everyone heard it. She inhaled once, slow and deliberate, then spoke into the phone again. "Confirm. Incident logged, time, stamped, and archived." The reply was immediate. "Confirmed. Internal ethics notified. Legal on standby." The lobby erupted. Guests gasped, whispered, filmed from every angle. Someone near the back muttered, "This isn't just a scene. This is evidence." The manager slammed both hands on the counter, but his power had already slipped through his fingers. "You're bluffing!" he shouted, his face red, his composure gone. She finally lifted her chin, eyes narrowing just slightly. "Then call the bluff." The silence that followed was thunderous. Phones recorded every second. The receptionist's face drained of color. The guard looked away, ashamed, and the crowd understood. The woman they tried to dismiss wasn't powerless. She was preparing to end them calmly, legally, irrevocably. The lobby felt like it was holding its breath. Every phone pointed at her now, every lens a witness. She didn't pace, didn't gesture wildly, didn't so much as raise her voice. She simply stood there in her orange blazer, calm against the storm. Then, finally, she spoke. "I am not waiting outside my own company." The words dropped heavy, echoing louder than the manager's shouts. Head snapped toward her. The young employee gasped, his phone trembling in his hand. The crowd murmured, disbelieving but electrified. The manager blinked, his mouth parting without sound. "Your company?" His laugh was brittle, breaking mid-breath. "You? That's impossible." She stepped forward, steady. "Impossible or inconvenient? Which one frightens you more?" The receptionist's lips parted, her smirk gone. "Wait, what do you mean?" The woman's eyes cut to her, cold and precise. I mean that I don't need your permission to enter this building. I built this building. I hired the people you answer to, and I signed the checks that paid for every marble tile under your feet. Gasps spread like wildfire. The phones caught every syllable. The guard's face drained, his hand falling completely to his side. No, he muttered, as though the ground had shifted beneath him. The manager stumbled for words. You're lying. Some stunt. His tie hung crooked now, his hands restless against the counter. She tilted her head, calm but cutting. You wanted to humiliate me in front of an audience. Consider the stage yours, except you chose the wrong role, because the woman you tried to push out is the chairwoman of this board. The lobby exploded in noise. Gasps, shouts, disbelief cascading into something heavier, applause from the back, hesitant at first, then stronger. A man near the elevators clapped twice, then again, and others followed, the sound sharp against marble. The young employee nearly dropped his phone. Oh my God, he whispered. She's the CEO. His words, captured by half a dozen cameras, spread across every screen in the room. The receptionist staggered back from the desk, pale as chalk. No, that can't. The guard shook his head, shame clouding his expression. He looked down, unable to meet her gaze. The manager, desperate, slammed a hand against the counter. You're bluffing. If you were really who you say... But he didn't finish, because she reached into her folder, pulled out a single document, and laid it flat on the counter. Her name, Carter, bold and unmistakable, was printed across the top beneath the company's seal. You said I was wasting your time, she said evenly. But time has just run out for you. The crowd roared, phones flashing like lightning. The verdict had landed, and in that instant, the lobby no longer belonged to the staff trying to erase her. It belonged to her. The room imploded into chaos. Gasps ricocheted off marble, voices clashed mid-air, phones jutted higher to capture what no one wanted to miss. The manager staggered back from the counter, his tie askew, his skin blotched with panic. He had demanded control, but now every pair of eyes was watching him unravel. The receptionist's face drained of color. Her smirk had vanished, replaced with a trembling lip and darting eyes that searched for an escape. I didn't know, she stammered, though the phones recorded her voice earlier dripping with contempt. The guard dropped his hand completely. He had gripped her sleeve with authority minutes before, but now he rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding her gaze like a schoolboy caught lying. From the back, a voice rang out. You tried to humiliate her, and she owns this place. Another shouted, We've all got it on camera. It's over for you. The applause started small, a woman with silver hair clapping slowly, defiantly. Then others joined, scattered at first, then rolling like thunder. The marble lobby echoed with hands smacking together, the sound a verdict no manager could overturn. The young employee, pale but resolute, stepped fully into the open. I told you, her name was on the system. You erased it. His phone pointed at the manager, unwavering. And now everyone knows. The manager tried one last swing. This is a misunderstanding, he yelled, but his voice cracked, splintered by fear. She could be fabricating this. The woman in orange turned toward him, steady as stone. Fabricating? She slid the document closer across the counter, the company's seal catching the chandelier's glow. The only thing fabricated here was your authority. Gasps surged again. A man in a suit muttered, He's finished. A woman whispered into her phone, This is going to blow up online. The receptionist's hands shook against the desk. I was just following orders, she whispered, but no one listened. The recording spoke louder than her excuses. The guard finally spoke, voice hollow. I didn't know. Her gaze cut to him, cool and precise. You didn't ask. That's the difference. The lobby vibrated with murmurs, the crowd now fully against the staff. Someone called out, You owe her an apology. Another shouted, You're all done here. The manager's breath came in ragged bursts, his face twisted between anger and fear, but fear was winning. He gripped the counter like it might steady him, but nothing could. Not with the evidence stacked high, not with the truth unveiled. And at the center of it all stood the woman they had tried to erase, silent, unshaken, watching them collapse under the weight of their own prejudice. The roles had flipped. The staff were no longer gatekeepers. They were defendants, cornered in a trial they had created. And the verdict was still coming. The applause didn't die down, it sharpened. Every clap was a hammer striking the coffin of their credibility. Phones swung toward the manager, the receptionist, the guard. Their faces, once puffed with authority, now sagged under the glow of screens broadcasting failure. The woman in orange didn't move until the last echo faded. Then she stepped closer to the counter, her heels clicking against marble with the finality of a gavel. She looked at the manager, the man who had torn her pass, spat accusations, and tried to erase her presence. Her voice came calm, precise. "Effective immediately," she said. "This board is dismissed." Gasps cut the air. The manager's mouth dropped open, soundless, before he managed to sputter, You can't." But she raised a hand, silencing him mid-sentence. "I can. And I just did." Her phone buzzed once in her palm. She lifted it to her ear, speaking into the quiet. "Initiate termination protocol. Lock their access." The reply came crisp, audible enough for the crowd to hear. "Confirmed. Board credentials revoked. Effective now." The receptionist's badge, clipped proudly to her blazer, flashed red. She pressed it to the desk reader, desperate, but the scanner beeped a dull denial. The guard's radio squawked, then cut to static. The manager's tablet screen went black, his login wiped clean before his eyes. The crowd erupted again, half gasps, half cheers. "Oh my God," someone muttered. "She really fired them on the spot." Another voice shouted, "That's power." The manager staggered, his authority evaporating with every failed attempt to regain control. You can't do this. This isn't legal." Her gaze pierced him, steady as steel. "Legal? Everything I've done is logged, documented, ratified. What's not legal is profiling the owner of this company, tearing her pass, and calling her a fraud in her own lobby." The receptionist shook her head, tears threatening. "I didn't mean it. You meant every word," the woman interrupted, her tone like a blade. "And now every word belongs to the record." The guard tried to step forward, to salvage something. "Please, I was just following orders." She cut him off with a glance. "And where did those orders lead you?" The silence that followed was heavier than any excuse. Phones stayed raised, capturing their downfall in real time. The lobby had become a courtroom, the verdict irreversible. She turned back to the crowd, her voice carrying across marble. "This building deserves better, this company deserves better, and effective today, it will have better." The manager opened his mouth again, but no words came. His power, his job, his control, all of it had vanished, ripped away, not with fists or shouting, but with a quiet authority none of them could contest. The woman in orange stood tall, her silence restored. And everyone in that lobby understood. Justice hadn't been delayed. It had arrived, swift, final, undeniable. The lobby was still buzzing, half disbelief, half awe, but she didn't let the noise sway her. She stood anchored, the orange of her blazer blazing brighter under the chandelier than any spotlight could. The phones were still raised, but now they weren't weapons against her. They were witnesses to her verdict. She looked once at the wastebasket where her visitor pass lay torn in half. Then she turned back to the crowd, her voice level, steady, cutting clean through the room. They thought silence meant weakness, but silence is just power waiting for the right moment. Ugh. Applause thundered, not scattered now but unified, rolling across marble like a tide. The young employee, still clutching his phone, looked at her as though he had just seen history being written. "You saved yourself without raising your voice," he whispered, his words caught by half a dozen cameras nearby. The manager slumped into a chair behind the counter, pale and hollow. The receptionist pressed trembling hands to her badge, the red light still blinking its denial. The guard leaned against the wall, no longer protector, no longer enforcer, just another man who had chosen wrong and watched it crumble in his hands. She didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Her presence was the victory. One final call she made, the phone snug against her ear. "Proceed with restructuring. Every open seat will be filled by people who know the difference between policy and prejudice." "Confirmed," the voice on the other end replied. "Effective immediately." "Huh." The crowd roared again. A woman in the back shouted, "That's leadership!" Someone else cried, "That's justice right here!" She closed her phone, slipped it back into her pocket, and started toward the elevators. The crowd parted instinctively, forming an aisle. Not out of fear, but out of respect. Phones lowered, not because the moment was over, but because the weight of it didn't need more proof. It was already etched in the marble, in memory, In the silence, she had wielded like a weapon. At the elevator doors, she paused. She looked back once, not at the staff she had dismantled, but at the witnesses who had stood in that lobby and seen how power really moves. Her gaze swept the room, steady and certain. "I don't need to film my justice," she said quietly, but the words carried anyway. "I am the final cut of it." The elevator chimed. The doors slid open. She stepped inside, lifted her chin once, and disappeared upward, leaving behind a lobby transformed. The applause followed her even as the doors closed. It wasn't just for her victory, it was for the message carved into every witness, every recording, every whisper now racing beyond those walls. Dignity doesn't shout, it stands. It waits. And then it wins.